Yeah, no, thank you very much for the interview as well and for the interest. For me, there are four main priorities. So the first job for me is to increase the dialogue, the engagement with member states, to listen to them, and to make sure that we find ways to progress on a common agenda. And that's the first thing. The second one is to reorganize as best as possible the organizational structure so that we can deliver more efficient and effective results. The OAS is doing a lot of good things, but the story is not told. So communication in the restructuring of the organization and the functioning of the institution will be relevant in that aspect. With that comes also realignment of our budget, because budget cuts have been taking place. At the same time, the member states expect improvements or support from the OAS. So we're going to mobilize in the second priority also the inter-American institutions. We're going to discuss not only with member states, but also with sub-regional organizations like CARICOM, SICA, the Brasilia Consensus, some of the tough issues which we need to deal with. The third priority for me is to deal with the immediate problems which we have in certain member states. Haiti is one of them. I know that there are discussions about Venezuela, and I'm not going to say much about it except for the fact that we must engage with whoever is in power at the moment. That's a reality. I don't believe in non-engagement. I don't believe in isolating ourselves from a process, because then we're not doing our job. We have to be an honest broker. We have to not take sides. We have to find solutions going forward. Nobody benefits from instability or political insecurity. And the last one is to start building and investing in a more sustainable future, in a more stable political environment, in a more peaceful environment. Slowly, this will not happen in 5 years, okay? I want to take away all kind of expectations. The first three we can work on, and I think we can do that within the 5 years. But the key thing is that we start committing to building peaceful societies, well-organized societies, invest in education, invest in health, invest in the private sector. The private sector has to play a role as well. Engage with the private sector, engage with civil society. And development in today's world is not only a responsibility for government. Everybody is responsible. So everybody has to take that responsibility as well. If we can do that, then the future of the hemisphere looks much better. Certainly would want to engage. It's not the highest priority at this point, but we must engage with all states. It will not be fair otherwise. So this is the third part of my interest. And the last one is to start building and investing in a more sustainable future, in a more stable political environment, in a more peaceful environment. Slowly, this will not happen in 5 years, okay? I want to take away all kind of expectations. The first three we can work on, and I think we can do that within the 5 years. But the key thing is that we start committing to building peaceful societies, well-organized societies, invest in education, invest in health, invest in the private sector. The private sector has to play a role as well. Engage with the private sector, engage with civil society. And development in today's world is not only a responsibility for government. Everybody is responsible. So everybody has to take that responsibility as well. If we can do that, then the future of the hemisphere looks much better. We always will have problems, but the thing is to look at it very positively and finding ways to solve problems. I'm not a person to just repeat problems, because that doesn't take us anywhere. We have to be pragmatic. and solution-oriented.
Perfect, Mr. Ramdin. In recent years, the organization has been criticized for its handling of some regional conflicts. How do you plan to strengthen the OAS credibility?
It is an important question, and it is certainly one of the issues that came during the election process. The credibility, the importance of the OES, the stature of the OES as an institution, as a trustworthy institution for the hemisphere. I believe that the only way we can recover that status is by doing two things. One, we must engage. We must talk to countries. We must be an honest broker. We cannot take sides. That's not my job. My job is to find solutions going forward. And of course, we will listen to all member states. We have to work with member states. They are the owners of the OES. The second thing is we have to deliver on the expectations. We have to make sure that member states see a benefit in the OES. And that can only happen if we understand better what is relevant to them and align that need with the activities we carry on. Well, let me be clear, Nicaragua is not a member anymore. Was their own choice to leave the organization. There is a process. They have complied, so they're not in the organization anymore. I don't want to say that we are not responsible to monitor the development there. We will continue to do that. There will always be an interest. But unless they want to engage again, it becomes very difficult to engage. I would like to see engagement, but at the moment, it does not seem a realistic option. With regard to Haiti, we're going to reestablish the group of friends of Haiti that exists when I was there for 10 years. And the group of friends can mobilize political support, can mobilize technical expertise, can mobilize funds. Because we engage not only the member states, but also the banks, the development agencies, the United Nations, PAHO, ICA, IDB, all are engaged in a group of friends. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to intensify our relations, our engagement with CARICOM on this matter because Haiti is part of CARICOM, and the Caribbean community has done in the past 2 years a lot to help move the process towards a better situation. And of course, we will have to engage the United Nations through which the military force is being facilitated, and other partners like France, Canada, the United States, and other countries. But we cannot just do that in an isolated way. We have to have a solid coordination. And last but not least, we will engage with the Haitian Transitional Council that is in charge of the development at this point in time. And I'm sure that we will make progress, but Haiti is not going to be a short-term solution. Haiti will require long-term assistance. It's going to be step-by-step improving the environment. Investment in education is going to be critical. Investment in security is going to be critical to maintain a level of political stability. Investment in the electoral system to make sure that it is efficient, but also that members of parliaments do what they are expected to do, is to help govern a country democratically. All these things we'll need to engage on in the coming days and months to come, but it's not going to be resolved in 4 or 5 years. Let's be clear about that. As I said, it is not clear where Venezuela stands in the OAS.
Okay.
This is an investigation that needs to be done. I will ask legal people, the legal experts, to look into this. What exactly is the status? And based on that, we can undertake more formal steps. If they are not a member, if that is the outcome, if they are not a member, then of course the situation changes somewhat. If they're still a member, then we need to have a discussion with them. And I believe that We need to make sure that in the open line of communication that should be fostered, we should be able to discuss issues which are of concern to the international community. That's human rights, that's detention, that's the whole democratic process, the electoral issues. I think if we can establish an open line where we can at least listen to each other, that's the first thing to do, is to listen to each other and understand each other's positions. It will give us an opportunity to raise some of the concerns we have. But if you have excluded yourself from dialogue, then it becomes very difficult to engage and to discuss these issues. This is a problem for many countries. The only way we can deal with this issue is, in my view, threefold. One is we need to make sure that the appetite for organized crime in our countries is limited. So that means, again, we need to bring economic development. We need to bring social development, especially to the youth. And we need to tackle issues like the illegal trafficking in firearms, which creates a difficult crime situation in many countries who do not have the equipment to fight it. And then we get social problems. But the most important thing is to make sure that everybody who is capable of working, has a job, has a steady income, can provide for themselves, has a good social life. And then at least that is one aspect. The second aspect is enforcement of legislation. We have to help countries to enforce the legislation. Many countries already have legislation, laws and rules and regulations, everything is there, but they don't have the capacity to enforce it, to execute. And we need to make sure that that is there. In that context, I must say that sub-regional cooperation is going to be critical. This is there are different types of security issues. In some countries or some regions, it's illegal trafficking in drugs. In others, it is illegal flows of capital. In other parts, it's something else. So we need to tackle these sub-regionally so that the countries work very closely, not only in terms of just making agreements about working together, but at a tactical, operational level as well. Otherwise, we will not be able to address. And we need to support these mechanisms. And the third one is we need to have a serious political dialogue on security matters. Many countries which are affected by illegal drug trafficking or illegal trafficking in persons or other types of cross-border crime, often they are just transshipment points. They are not the producers of drugs. They're not the consumers of drugs. It is produced somewhere else. It's consumed somewhere else. So that creates a problem because these countries do not have that kind of capability to respond to that. Not on the ports, not in terms of interdiction and surveillance of flights coming in and going out. So we need to also address the issue about production and consumption. And that's not in these countries. Well, the production is in some countries, the consumption is in Europe and the United States. Well, we need to address that as well. That is a more structural approach. So that's how I look at it. Oh, one thing I hope that the OES, because we have our own problems, that the OES doesn't get entangled in global geopolitics. We see that many countries already have a negative impact from the two conflicts which we have in the world, in Eastern Europe with Ukraine and Russia, and in the Middle East. Our countries are affected by that. We don't need more conflicts in the first place. Secondly, our hemisphere is for a long time a peaceful hemisphere. We want to keep it like that. So we don't want to be inviting other problems which are beyond us in our hemisphere. So the global politics, in terms of the geopolitics, you mentioned two countries. If they can solve the problem their own, that's the best. We stay out of it. That's my perspective on it. And I don't think it is the intent of countries to get us involved. And we have to that's why I said we need a good political discussion on this, is how do we deal with these issues? Let us not forget, the OES is one of the oldest regional organizations in the world. It's one of the 5 or 6 organizations that are recognized by the United Nations. We play a role in this hemisphere. Our job is to make sure that we have political stability. Our job is that we have security, that we don't have wars. Our job is to have a good, solid understanding that if we have problems, that we don't enter into wars or conflict, but that we dialogue, that we negotiate through diplomatic channels. And ultimately, most importantly, is to give our people a prosperous life. And that can only happen if we invest in our countries, and that we trade among ourselves, and that we make sure that that prosperity benefits not only this generation, but future generations as well. There is enough economic potential in our hemisphere to make good use of that. This is a difficult one, I must say, simply because it requires the full commitment, a strong, full commitment of societies in our hemisphere in the first place. And societies, again, are not made only of politicians, but the whole population. So, of course, governments need to commit in the first place and recognize these fundamental aspects of life: equality, dignity, and also opportunity for all. Independent, who you are, where you live, how you look, everybody should be equal. But we know that that is not an easy, because this requires a mindset change. And we have to teach our children in schools to adopt these kinds of measures and norms and values. If we can do that, I think that's a step forward. It's going to take a long time, but we should find ways. Not only, I don't believe in repeating and readopting all the time the same principles, because that's not a problem. We know what we need to do. The issue is, how do you get governments to act on those, to enforce those agreements which we have signed? There are many conventions worldwide, in the region as well. So the job we want to play is to provide concrete assistance in terms of fostering equality and making sure that everybody has its full right in society. And we're going to work on that, but it has to be concrete. And even if it is a little step forward, it's an important step forward. We are in good touch with the Panamanian government. I recently spoke with Minister Acha on this. We hear from the United States high-level expressions with regard to how they look at things. There is an issue that needs to be discussed, and at this stage, I would say that the discussion needs to take place between both countries, the United States and Panama. The OES has played an historic role in being the facilitator of the transmission of the Panama Canal through treaty in 1977. So the OES cannot stay beside it. There is a moral obligation, I would say, to be engaged, but again, to facilitate that everybody comes on the same page. And we have to understand what the real issues are here. Beyond that, my position is very clear that when you have signed a treaty between two states, we need to honor that. And with that, and that's why I said in the past, the sovereignty of the Panama Canal is from Panama.